It's day 3 of the Karen Read Retrial. It is Thursday, April 24th, and we have not gotten through a ton of witnesses, but we've had some of the more important and longer witnesses in the first few days. So what witnesses will be up today? I don't know. We are still on the paramedic. Last trial, by day 3, it was very clear that Lally was going in the order of who arrived on scene. That is not the order that we are seeing the Commonwealth go in. Will that be a good thing for the jury? I think having Kerry Roberts come in early, even with that cross-examination, gave the jury at least a timeline of what happened from like 5 a.m. to discovering John O'Keefe, to law enforcement showing up, to ambulances, to Karen Read going to the hospital. I think it gave them that timeline instead of watching the footage of everyone driving to 34 Fairview in the morning. I think it gave the jury the overview of what happened, or at least what her testimony is that happened. And I think a lot of that is corroborated. Some of it is not, but a lot of that is corroborated with other testimony in Karen Read's own words. So that is where we are really picking up now that we're getting into the paramedic that transported Karen Read. Will we get into other fire medics? Maybe not. We know it's snowing. We've heard like 3 sentences about it. Maybe we will go to what John O'Keefe's night was like next and get into the family, friends. Maybe that's where we're going to get into today, but I'm just not sure. So we're going to go to court. We are going to see what happens.
You wanted a ruling on the clip from yesterday?
I did.
All right, you can play it.
Thank you.
All right, so...
What? How is that clip evidence? What is it evidence of? Ma'am, that is a mistake.
And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, I think it looks like he got hit by a car. It looks like he got hit by a car.
They weren't allowed to play it yesterday. They wanted to play it yesterday at the same time that they played the previous clip, and they couldn't. So yes, it's completely out of context.
When you walked out of the bar, how many drinks had you had?
I have had probably about 4, and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
And 4 drinks you felt fine to drive?
Yep.
Clip 8, please.
And is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's
You'd had a lot to drink, right?
I wouldn't say I have like a normal amount. Like a vodka tonic every 40 minutes.
Okay. And so are you feeling like buzzed? And I'm not judging, I'm just trying to get a sense.
Buzzed.
Yeah.
Clip 9, please.
On how much you had to drink.
The final count,
The
final count of my alcohol intakes, probably about 5 or 6 or 4. The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. It tasted just like all soda water with lime. Not that I need it to be a martini, but it might have had a splash of vodka in it. So I said, John, this drink tastes like it has no vodka in it. And he said, just get a shot and mix it yourself. So each drink was being counted as a double. So I would get a vodka tonic and then I would pour a shot into it. So that would count as 2. But frankly, it just felt like a regular cocktail. It was just a really weak pour. So I asked for a shot. So for my taste, it just tasted like that's the normal strength of what a drink should be. So I had maybe 2 or 3 that are being counted as 4 and 6. And I don't know. I felt fine. I felt like I was buzzed. And then there was one drink, the last one that was given to me, which I would have counted as 3, but they're counting as my 6th cocktail. The guys that we were with bought a round of shots, and they gave me one that I didn't drink, but I poured it in my drink. So that's now my 5th and 6th drinks, with the 7th, which is a shot that all the men did, and I poured it. So that one glass that I'm holding that I go into the waterfall with has 3 drinks in it, a vodka tonic and 2 shots. And which is why John said to me, you're not leaving that drink here. Like, you haven't touched it and we've just poured a bunch of vodka. He's like, just take it with you, which was something he always did. So then I go into Waterfall and I put that drink down and I socialize most of the time. So that would have been my 5th, 6th, and 7th drinks. Then John orders me a drink at the Waterfall that I don't drink, that he takes with him. And then there was a round of shots that Chris Albert bought that I did take. So that would have been the 9th. But I did not consume 9 vodka martinis or take 9 shots, depending on how you count it. And the last 2 drinks, I didn't touch.
I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I mean, I had drank, so, and that led me to question, like, could I have hit him? Did I run over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him? I mean, I always drive with my music blasting ever since I was 16. And I know when John got out of the car to go into Fairview, I know my car was blasting because when I got in it the next morning to go look for him, I had to immediately turn it down. And I don't know, it's stormy. I have had a few cocktails. I didn't black out, but I wasn't as lucid as I would have been if I had gone to bed at 9 and drank a tea. But so I was fuzzier than I would have been if I had had no alcohol.
Clip 11, please.
How did you feel after that many drinks? When you got in the car, did you feel like you could drive, and did you feel how buzzed?
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway.
I had enough to drink.
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet. The roads were very quiet. You can see it on the videos. And I was going, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always drive extra slow because I know my alerts aren't as sharp as they should be. But I shouldn't have been driving. But I don't think I was driving. I know I wasn't driving recklessly. I mean, I've got plenty of video of myself driving all over the place. I put my car in John's garage, which is incredibly narrow, and I had a very oversized SUV. You see me. There's a video of me driving through the intersection when we leave Waterfall to go to Brian Albert's, and I was always taught by my father, even when you have a green light, you always should tap the brake. You don't know who's going to run a red. And I see me doing that multiple times between 12 and 1 and 5 and 6 a.m. So I know I was driving safely, not as safely or as alert as I would be if I had no alcohol. But I was not driving recklessly by any measure.
Court ended very early today on day 3 of the Karen Read trial because the court said to the jury there was witness confusion. I don't know why Brennan didn't have witnesses for the rest of the day because the morning witnesses went very quickly. It wasn't even up to the lunch break yet when court ended because they ran out of witnesses for the day, which the court said to the jury, I've been told won't happen again. They had Trooper Garino on the stand at the end of the day going through Karen Read and John O'Keefe's text messages leading up to them getting to CF McCarthy's before they went to the Waterfall, before they went back to 34 Fairview. Could Trooper Garino have brought in more text messages? Probably. Did they do that? No. Then earlier in the day, we had one of John O'Keefe's good friends, Mike Camerano, testify about going to One Meadows, picking John up, taking him over to CF McCarthy's, talking a little bit about John's niece and nephew being friends with his kids. His testimony is just heart-wrenching, but it's also very clear. It is not exaggerated testimony. It is not overwrought. It is just very linear, direct answers to direct questions, which is refreshing to see after this morning's cross-examination that just was so fiery. Yannetti came in so hot, he was just hollering at the witness that ended the day yesterday on the rest of the cross-examination about really fine points of what this witness was saying. And the main argument was over that paramedic saying, well, Karen Read was asking if John O'Keefe could have survived if he was in the snow for a long period of time in light clothing. Could he have had hypothermia? Could he have survived it? And there were points of testimony that were if he was sat in the snow, and there were points of testimony that seemed to be the confusion where Yannetti was asking, but Karen Read wasn't telling you that, she was asking you that. And that got confusing between Yannetti and the witness, which then made it confusing for everyone. But the witness said, no, I've always said she was asking us, could he have survived even if he was in the snow? And the witness is like, I didn't say she told me he was in the snow for hours. And that seemed to be the big point of contention with that testimony to the defense, is that you didn't testify about that before. And now is she asking it, or is she telling you he was in the snow for hours, which could be a point that you could see the Commonwealth using, saying, see, she knew he was in the snow. Well, she didn't say it. She asked it, which is consistent with everything else we've heard in this case. And then we got into all of John O'Keefe and Karen Read's text messages back and forth on the 28th, leading up to them meeting up at CF McCarthy's. And the communication is not smooth. It is not easy. It is not clear. It is clear that they had disagreements overnight, like 27th into the morning, and that they were still not done. It seemed to me, and we have it all timestamped in the stream, so go back and watch the text, interpret them for yourself. That's what the jury will do. It seemed to me that she was trying to be like, I need to finish talking to this. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it right now. She's like, well, I want to finish talking about it because if we're going out tonight, I would like to have the conversation. He's like, I'm not having the conversation right now. She's like, but we need to have a conversation. He's like, I'm not having this. And that went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Though we saw more text messages than I remember in the first trial. They might have come in. I just don't remember them. But text messages about whether or not she had unfriended him on Facebook, and then if he's going to refriend her on Facebook, and then her hot water being out, which I do remember from last time, and then if they're all meeting up at CF McCarthy's. But if that exchange went pretty quickly and is most of the day in court today, if you want to see those text messages back and forth, and then ending the day with, well, clips of interviews that we did not see in the last trial. And the prosecution, I think, organized them very well, because it was clip after clip after clip of interviews, and different ones, of Karen Read talking about drinking that night and her different variations of, well, this is how the drinks went. And it's the first time I've heard her explain, well, the drinks at CF McCarthy's were weak. They were vodka tonics, but they just tasted all like soda water and lime. So John said, we'll just get a shot and put it in and mix it yourself. And she's like, so for my taste, they were really weak. So I just got a shot and put it in, because that made it like a normal vodka tonic. She's like, I'm not like drinking martinis. And she said something about martinis. I'm paraphrasing, but it's not like they're martinis. It's not like they're just straight vodka with like a spritz, like a twist of lemon, carcass out. Not at all what she was saying. She was saying they were weak. I put shots in, but she was going through what the Commonwealth will see. And if you haven't watched this trial yet, we haven't gotten there in testimony yet, but the Commonwealth put in testimony of the last trial about whether it was 9 drinks that she had. And she was saying, well, no, it's really, this one's really weak. And I put a shot in. They're counting it as 2. I'm counting it as 1. But the very last clip they played had Karen Read talking about being intoxicated. And she said, I'm buzzed, I'm happy. And in that last clip saying, I'm fuzzy, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking, but I had been drinking. And, I was taking side roads. I wouldn't have driven on the highway. I wouldn't have driven on the interstate, but I was taking side roads, and I drive slow if I'd been drinking and was going to drive. And so was talking about not just drinking and driving this time, but to me, it sounded like saying, well, when I do have drinks and drive, I drive slow. And I saw myself doing that in these videos. So I know that I wasn't driving recklessly, which will go to count 2. I know that I wasn't driving recklessly, even though I had had drinks and was driving. So we had Karen Read's conversation about drinking and driving from her. So I wonder if when we get to the testimony about what her blood alcohol was in the morning of January 29th, if that testimony will hit this jury different, because they're going to hear it after they've heard Karen Read saying, well, I was buzzed and I had been drinking, but I drive carefully when I drive under the influence. Because now they have her saying, yes, I was driving under the influence. Will the testimony about her BAC be received differently? Will the defense approach that information differently? And I have to wonder if that will be the next evidence we hear, because with the confusion about the witnesses today, we heard from Brennan saying, well, the next witness up after they do a jury view is going to be the person talking about the lab procedures. I wonder if that is the lab procedures with regard to Karen Read's blood draw, and that's the next information the jury is going to hear. It makes logical sense that we would get to that information next. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the LawNerd app at lawnerdapp.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and You never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a law nerd.